Hey, in today's video, we're going to take a look at a power station with a very unique design, certainly the most unique design that I have reviewed on the channel to date. This is by a company called Montek, and this is their X1000 portable power station. Is it worth a look? Let's find out. So I was made aware of this particular power station by one of my subscribers, Susan Klein. Thank you, Susan. And I reached out to Montek and they agreed to provide a unit for me to check out. And this is the guy here. So before we get into all the details, let's jump back in time and see what you get in the box. All right, we have one user manual, get into that later, and a warranty card. Looks like it's a 24-month or 2-year warranty. And this is what we got. This is obviously a black case. I think they make a tan case as well. And I'm not sure what options they sent me. Let's open it up and find out. It's like a Pelican case if you're familiar with those. Very, very rugged and waterproof. Okay, so this is obviously the X1000 without the 80-watt solar panel inside. But they make a couple different versions of this. So you can also get this with an 80-watt solar panel folded up inside. Now, they didn't obviously send me the 80-watt solar panel. They sent me something better, actually. They sent me this guy. This is way too big to get on camera inside. This is their new 400-watt solar panel. This is their model SP400. Now this is for a 400-watt panel, yeah, it's a beast, but it's actually not nearly as heavy as the other 400-watt panel, portable 400-watt panel that I reviewed. It's about half the weight, but it's very, very thin panels. And so I'll be interested to see what this is like outside, maybe on a windy day as well, to see how it holds up. So we're going to test this later, but this is currently on pre-order, pre-sale. I think they start shipping near the end of April on this particular product. So this product you cannot actually get today, but it'll be available in a month or two. So shipping near the end of April, and they're taking pre-orders for it now. But more on that later. All right, back to the X1000. I'm going to go ahead and shut this because there's not really much reason to open the case if it doesn't have a panel inside. But you know, there's a nice little bit of storage in there, even though it's very thin and shallow. Let's see what else we got here. We got a couple of panels here. Got your 12-volt socket there. Looks like there's two DC 5521s and then also two DC 5525s. The difference being that you get up to 10 amps on the 5525 connectors and only up to 7 amps on the 5521s. Now the car socket is a 10 amp 12 volt as you would expect. And then it's got two quick charge 18 watt type A USBs, and it's got a 100 watt PD, I think it's output only, but type C, 100 watt type C PD port. So that's what's over here. And then you've got over here, you've got a threaded sealed solar connector. So we'll have to check that out later. Let's find out what's on the other side. So these are waterproof panels, or I should say rainproof. So here's your two AC outlets. Now these are 1,000 watt max because this is a 1,000 watt AC inverter. And I think it is 1,010 watt hours in rated capacity. And we're going to find out what its usable capacity is, both on the AC side and the DC side. But there are some cables stored in here, if I can get them out. Since I don't have the 80 watt solar panel, it might be easier for me to just store the cables on the top. Let's see what they got. Well, they got several cables in here. I think that's it. Yeah, okay. So what do we got? We've got an AC charge cable with no AC charge brick. So that must mean that somewhere there's a port that has this connector on it that I can charge this via AC without a charge brick. So that's nice. All I got to do is plug in a cable. And then I've got a car charger to their little 2-pin threaded style DC input. So car charger cable, and then a looks like MC4 to their 2-pin DC input, which is that solar port on the other side. So I'm assuming this will connect right up to the 400 watt panel or the 80 watt panel if that's the version that you got. Cool. All right, there's our power switch, and oh, that's cool. It looks like it's got a multicolor LCD. I don't know if that actually shows up here or not on camera. I'll try to give you a close-up of that, but just underneath the handle. So it looks like it shows me the state of charge and what ports are currently energized and how much watts are going in or out. So all the basic information. Anyway, let me go run this thing through the paces for a few weeks and find out how it actually performs, what kind of things we can run with it, how it might work for you, how it charges via solar, all that kind of stuff, and I'll report back in just a few seconds. All right, we are back. It has been several weeks now since I've unboxed this thing and started to play with it and run through some tests. And before we get into the tests and take a look at how it works with solar charging and all that and how well it performed, let's talk about some of the specs. So first of all, you can buy this thing and the solar panel on imontek.com website. And again, I'll put links below. And I think they've got a discount code for me again, so you want to double check that. You can also buy the X1000 in a couple different variations on Amazon as well. Now, I'm not sure where you're going to find the best price. I do know that the discount code I think that they gave me probably only works on the imontek.com website. So just be aware of that. You may want to check both places and find out where you can get the best price or the best deal with shipping and all that sort of stuff. So you might want to check both places. But just for a frame of reference, the X1000 by itself, if you apply the discount codes, it currently is selling for about $8.99, and I think you can get it with that built-in little 80 watt solar panel option for like another $100 on top of that as a bundle if you apply all the discount codes. So that's pretty cool. Now, in terms of warranty, I think the X1000 does have a 2-year warranty on it, and I believe the solar panel has a 1-year warranty on it. Now, in terms of weight, this comes in at right about 25 pounds, which is pretty typical for a 1,000 watt-hour capacity power station. And then the 400 watt solar panel actually only weighs about 20 pounds, actually slightly less than 20 pounds, if you can believe that. So remarkably lightweight for a 400 watt portable solar panel. And its maximum voltage is spec'd at 39 volts at about 10.25 amps. So you want to be aware of that as you want to try to pair it appropriately to a power station with compatible DC input capacity. Now, the folded dimensions of that solar panel are 31.5 inches on all sides, so it's basically square, and it's only about, I would say, 1.5 inches thick folded up. So it's very thin and, as I said, very light. All right, let's get into the specs of the X1000 specifically because it's kind of the star of the show here. Now, this is a 1,010 watt-hour capacity unit, which is pretty typical for a 1,000 watt AC inverter power station. Now, in terms of battery chemistry, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. The X1000 actually does use lithium NMC instead of lithium iron phosphate, and I would actually prefer lithium iron phosphate. But unlike products like the Jackery line of power stations, this is lithium NMC polymer pouch cells. And that is not the kind of thing that Jackery is using. And the big difference there is that, like, for example, on the typical lithium ternary or lithium NMC that Jackery uses, those are only rated to maintain 80% of their original capacity through 500 or 600 full charge-discharge cycles. This is actually rated because these are EV grade and these are capable of charging at 3C continuously. They're actually rated for 3C discharge continuously. That's 3 times higher than you typically find lithium NMC in these power stations. And since we're only discharging these things at 1,000 watts continuous, which is 1C, these things are actually rated to maintain 80% of their original capacity through 2,000 charge cycles, not 500 or 600. Now, the main reason I prefer lithium iron phosphate over lithium NMC is typically because lithium iron phosphate has significantly higher life cycles. But that's when you're comparing 500 to 600 cycles versus 2,500 cycles. This significantly closes that gap with that 2,000 life cycle rating. All right, let's move on. So I mentioned that the AC inverter supports 1,000 watts continuous and 2,000 watts surge. Now, in terms of charging the X1000, you've got a variety of options there, as you would expect. You've got AC, you've got car charging, you've got solar charging, and this thing is actually quite capable in all of those areas. So in terms of AC charging, as I mentioned, it's got a built-in AC adapter that's, I think, 210 watts. It'll take you approximately 6 hours to fully charge this from 0 to 100%. But the X1000 also supports dual charging, so you can actually charge this through AC and also solar for, I think, a total max of 560 watts of charging input. That would dramatically reduce your charge time. Now, speaking of solar, the X1000 does have a built-in MPPT charge controller, and it will handle up to 360 watts, and the voltage range, according to the manual, is 12 volts up to 70 volts. But again, keep in mind that it is going to cap you at a 360 watt input. So while we're on that topic, let's just go take a look at some clips, and you can see how installing the solar panel and charging the X1000 with that 400 watt solar panel actually works. All right, we have finally got above freezing temperatures here this first couple days of February, and the sun is out, pretty good force. So let's set up this X1000 from Montek and the 400 watt panel and find out how well it performs. And let's also find out how easy this panel is or not to set up and take down. All right, as you can see, this thing is super long. It is about 10 feet long, I would guess. I'll put the exact length here, but it does come with this little kind of almost like a tent pole arrangement that is clearly designed, from what I can see, that you kind of run this along the upper back above the legs, and it helps give it some rigidity, because these panels are super thin, which is why it is so light compared to, say, another 400 watt portable panel, which is more than double the weight. So I'm going to go ahead and string this tent pole arrangement in there and just see what it does. It's not super windy today, very light breeze, not too bad, but we'll put it in anyway. All right, that was a little easier to put in than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more fiddly than it actually turned out to be. But let's go ahead and hook this thing up to the X1000, see what kind of output we get in this kind of condition, which is pretty clear. All right, now the cable that comes with it ends in MC4 connectors, as you can see here, and you get about 5 feet with that. And when you add the adapter with this little 2-pin connector on it for the X1000, that gives you another 3 feet or so. So you get about 8 feet total on this cable connection. I guess you have to just line the little white dots up, and then you can connect it. Now it does have these 3-way kind of elastic bands underneath, allowing you to change the angle pretty well. So in terms of flexibility there, that's not bad. But to give you a close-up of this, we are currently getting 318 watts input on this power station.
2 hours later.
All right, it has been just at 2 hours since I put this up, and you can see I'm at 68%. Now my watt input has dropped significantly because I'm now starting to get some shadowing on the corner of the panel as the sun has moved across the sky. But this certainly speaks to this panel's ability to fully recharge this particular power station in 4 hours with reasonable sun. It should be no problem at all, 4 or 5 hours, even in sort of partly cloudy conditions. So 1 full day in most weather conditions, unless there's just no sun, should be fine for this 400 watt panel paired with this X1000 power station from Montek. Now, I will say that this panel did blow over one time because we did get some mild gusts of wind here, and there's just so much surface area that you do want to plan on anchoring this panel in some way if you're going to be in any kind of a breezy area. And I'm not even talking about a lot of wind, just mild wind gusts, maybe up to 8 miles an hour would be enough without any sort of anchoring to blow this panel over if the direction is just right. So just be aware of that. Let's find out how long it takes to break this panel down. All right, even folded up, you can see how much flex there is in this panel. That's what makes it super lightweight, but that's also what makes it less stable in the wind. So just be aware. All right, so as you saw, the 400 watt solar panel works really well actually with this 1000. It got us almost to the maximum 360 watt input that the X1000 allows. And that kind of input really allows you to easily charge this particular power station from 0 to 100% in a single day, actually a fair amount less than a single day if you have decent sun conditions. You can charge it in just maybe 3.5 or 4 hours. All right, let's move on to some of the other testing. In terms of no load draw on the AC inverter, so in other words, how much capacity does this thing consume with the AC inverter on? Like let's say you forget to turn it back off after you've unplugged your devices. How much capacity does it lose? And over an extended test, and doing the math on that, I came up with a figure of an average of about 0.75% of your capacity for every hour that you leave it on. Now by default, it does not auto shut off, which is nice if you have an intermittent power draw device or a very low power draw device. Then you don't want this thing to shut off unexpectedly unless you actually physically turn it off. So by default, that is how it will operate. But if you do want an auto shut off, you can actually get into a hidden menu on this and configure that option. So it's nice that they have you covered. You can actually do it either way. Now, I always like to test for usable capacity on a power station, and as I mentioned, it's rated for 1010 watt hours. But in terms of what can we actually use, on the DC side, as you can see here, I ran my usual DC discharge test with my battery tester, and in that test, we netted about 876 watt hours, which is basically an 86.7% of its rated capacity, which is slightly above average coming out of on the DC output side. Now, I did run those tests on the AC side in the course of doing some AC load testing. So let's just go look and see how those clips turned out. So I've got a space heater over here on the right-hand side. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on, and it's going to ramp up. And we're going to watch the power draw here. And we'll see if it lets us get over 1,000 watts at all. So we're just about to hit 800 watts, 900, just crossed 1,000, 1,200. Almost 1,300 there. So we just got over 1,300 watts, and we can now see over here we have an overload warning. So this particular space heater will try to pull up to 1,500 watts. So we obviously didn't get there, and the X1000 did shut us down as it is designed to do. To clear the overload on this, all you need to do is press the AC on-off button, and you can see this resets from overload back to its normal status. I'm going to go ahead and turn the small heater on and just see where that gets us. All right, now I'm going to plug in an oil heater, and I'm going to turn it on to the 800 watt setting. That should get us right up to 1,000 watts, or very close to it. All right, so I'm going to let this run for a while, pretty much as long as I can, and see if it either shuts down prematurely due to overload or over temp, or if it just runs continuously without an issue until it runs out of power. So I suspect it'll be the latter, but we'll find out. All right, just for a little comparison here. Here's how much noise the fans put out when you're discharging at maximum rate. All right, let's see how many electrons we caught. All right, so as you can see, we got 904 watt hours, which is outstanding. That's about 90% of the rated capacity, and the average on power stations that I've tested is between 84 and 85%, I would say. So this is definitely above average. All right, so in terms of AC load testing and usable battery capacity, the X1000 is clearly a solid performer. So what kinds of things can you actually run with a power station in this particular 1000 watt class? So let's take a look at that. So I did some testing on a 2-slice toaster, and as you can see here, there was no issues there. It runs just fine. So then I connected it to a fairly large air fryer, and as soon as I started the cook cycle, it shut down on me pretty much immediately. So that was a no-go on the air fryer. So what about like a full-size PC and a monitor? As you can see here, no problems running a full-size PC and monitor. That runs just fine. It's well under that 1,000 watt continuous limit. So what about an Instant Pot? This is a full-size Instant Pot. And as you can see here, it starts up and runs just fine. Now it does draw very close to that 1,000 watt continuous limit, but I had no issues running that whatsoever. So what about a full-size refrigerator? I did test that as well. And as you can see, it does seem to work just fine. Really, the key parameter that you need to be aware of when running a full-size refrigerator is what is the surge capacity of a power station. And this 2,000 watt surge is plenty to accommodate the compressor startup on a full-size refrigerator. And while 1,000 watt hours of battery capacity is not probably the the best solution for running a refrigerator, you could get somewhere around 9 or 10 hours of runtime with a typical full-size refrigerator on this X1000. All right, let's wrap up with some pros and cons on the X1000. Let's start with the cons. So the first con for me, I think, would have to be the battery chemistry. I would prefer lithium iron phosphate primarily for its longer life cycle. But I will say, because Montek is actually using those lithium NMC polymer cells that are EV rated, that the difference between lithium iron phosphate and lithium NMC in this case is much less dramatic than it is in, say, like the Jackery products, for example. Now, the last couple of cons I would have on this is it doesn't have any mobile app support and it doesn't support UPS functions. And those for me are always nice to have, but they're not necessarily deal breakers. Now, in terms of the pros, let's talk about the pros. The first pro is this very unique form factor. This briefcase design makes it possible to tuck this thing into a variety of little nooks and crannies, either for storage and operation, as long as you're keeping the side panels able to be open for proper ventilation. But you can operate this thing upright, flat. It actually works as a pretty good monitor stand, as you saw. And I like the fact that there's a little bit of storage in here that you can just tuck the cables right inside the case. Now, speaking of the case, this is like a Pelican case, if you're familiar with those. This is very rugged. In fact, this is probably the most rugged power station that I have reviewed to date, really without question. It is really designed to be banged around. It is shockproof. It is fully weatherproof if you have these side panels closed. There are waterproof gaskets around there. Now, you obviously don't want to drop this into a creek, but this thing can handle rain no problem, as long as you got the panels closed. All right, so that's about all I got for you. Please consider giving me a thumbs up on the video if you found any of this information helpful. I would really appreciate that. And as usual, I've got more of this kind of content coming, so if that's your jam, feel free to hit the subscribe button. I'd love to have you on board for that. Anyway, thanks for sticking with me to the end. I do hope to see you in the next one. And until then, have fun out there.